Okay, hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, The Future of Education, How to Learn from Anywhere. My name is Kevin Hogan, and I'll be moderating this event. I am the editor-at-large for eSchool News, and I'm excited to have you join us for what should be a very informative session. Today's webinar is sponsored by Jamf, the Standard and Apple Enterprise Management. The company extends the legendary Apple experience people love to businesses, schools, and government organizations through its software and the world's largest online community of IT admins that are focused exclusively on Apple, Jamf Nation. Before I introduce our presenters, I'd like to take a minute to go over some features of the platform that we're using for this webinar. Today's event will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. You can submit questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on the Q&A box. There will be time at the end of the presentation for our speakers to address your questions. Also, there is a chat function that you can launch by clicking on chat. Feel free to use this feature to contact someone from the eSchool News team if you have a technical question, but please don't use this feature to ask questions of our speakers. If you have a question for the speakers, please use the Q&A box that I just mentioned. Before we get started, we'd like to find out a little bit more about our audience today. Chris, can you run the poll questions? So poll question number 1, what level of information does your organization have on the students' internet access? Do you have data on all students? Do you have data on students who do not have home internet access? Or do you track how many students or family members are using home internet? This has been a really important distinction that has come out as a result of the pandemic. I found in our reporting at eSchool News, the number of folks who didn't realize that a large number of students that didn't have access. So we'll see what sort of results we get, Chris. Let's see what those results come up with. Yeah, so you can see that there is an issue. Unfortunately, one of the many things that have come out of this pandemic, that this is something that really needs to be taken care of. Okay, Chris, you could hit the second question. So if your organization provides internet access to students who don't have their own source, how does that happen? Is it through hotspots? Is it through a built-in cellular database devices? Maybe another service provider? Maybe mapped out hotspot locations like libraries or even the school buildings themselves? Or maybe you've deployed hotspots out. I know I've spoken to a number of tech directors who, on March 14th, when everything went haywire, just got into their cars, drove around, and handed out, hotspots. It's a pretty wild situation, but that's where we are. Okay, so that's a pretty evenly distributed number of solutions that are out there. Be interested to find out what those others are as well. So, well, thank you for participating in that. I think that will help our presenters and me when it comes to the Q&A section. But so with these housekeeping items out of the way, why don't we get started with the presentation?
Hi, my name is Dave Saltmarsh. I'm the Global Education Strategist at Jamf.
And my name is Molly Schmidt, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Education at Jamf. We've got a great agenda for you today. We're going to be talking about the future of education, having an equity discussion, and talking about the unique challenges of communication, engagement, and assessment in education today regarding virtual learning. We're also going to show you some best practices, product workflows, and valued partners. So let's get started. Jamf helps organizations succeed with Apple. Jamf is the standard for Apple in education. We help schools connect, manage, and protect Apple products, apps, and educational resources in the cloud without anybody ever needing to touch a device. Perfect in our virtual environment. Jamf School is the flagship product in our Jamf Education product offering. Jamf Pro also serves EDU well in larger K-12 and institutional settings. Jamf Nation is a destination for our users, and Jamf Protect helps organizations protect data and educational information in educational organizations. The immediate overnight pivot to remote learning last spring around the world has no end in sight, especially in the US. Couple the remote learning challenges around student engagement with equity issues around devices and connectivity, and it's a crisis for those in underserved areas. In a recent 2020 National Public Radio survey, it was indicated that 38% of underserved students were not engaging in remote learning. Whereas if you flip that over, 83% of students in higher income areas were engaging. This is staggering, and Jamf wants to help schools help students.
The problem that exists today is that we're transitioning between education at schools and education at home, and we need to transfer the learning experience from the physical world to the virtual world. This requires a mindset and tools in order to be successful. However, we don't want to lose the connection between the physical and the virtual. How students interact with the virtual world makes a difference. The different affordances and modes of input must be as diverse as the learners. There is no one-size-fits-all. We must be able to adjust agilely to what and how students engage the content, because that's normally a dynamic process. Usually teachers, and if they have with-itness, they do this almost without knowing. Tech needs to be able to enable this regardless of where the learner is and where the teacher is. Many schools already have the tools, and they've been applying them in the physical world, but they're unsure of how to pivot quickly. Jamf and Apple can help. While there are many different stories, there seems to be two different kinds of stories that have come out from being forced to shift to student learners learning from home. Some, perhaps many organizations, have been underprepared, while others, and certainly they've experienced difficulty, they have entered the situation with the advantage of previously having addressed many of these areas of concerns, and they've mitigated those over the last several years. This next part for me may sound a little redundant if you've been following me for the last few years. In fact, I would say my career has really been focused on trying to support improving equity in schools, and specifically around digital equity. And what I'm seeing, and those organizations that are succeeding have been focused on digital equity and are continuing to. And if we look a little deeper at the layers and the elements, because the need to address digital equity has and continues to require an examination of several elements across school, home, and community. And while not a new need, the current shift is bringing to the forefront the need to shift to an active learning model that focuses on personalization with students in the center. And this requires us to provide devices. Some organizations, many have been doing one-to-one for decades even, sending devices home, ensuring that there's quality devices, capable of using all technology, whether it's online or offline, capable of engaging students beyond a teacher-led model. Of course, home internet access has been around. It's not a new topic. There's a big push for equity right now, although organizations have spent the last decade or more finding ways to mitigate the concerns of not all students having high-speed broadband or other technologies in their house to give them the enriching experience they need. Now it's more than if, But at what level students have access to internet? Are they sharing it? Do they have family members at home using the bandwidth? Are they having to pick the times when they can get on? Organizations that had a plan for this are ahead of many others. This aspect right here could be one of the biggest gaps we're experiencing. Another gap that has been addressed with assistive technology and organizations focused on all learners is becoming more aware as they've sent students home when we think about the needs for assistive technology or just technology that helps all different types of learners. And whether we're at school or at home, the type of content students are interacting with is becoming more aware by more than those people within the school walls. Schools that have adopted evaluation models have done so because they believe if you're going to do something and it's important, you do it purposely and you measure it and you're able to show results and show gradual change. If an organization hasn't already adopted a model like SAMR or TPAC or LODI to help evaluate their technology, then they're already behind the curve as far as trying to help their teachers understand and improve their instruction with technology. And when we think about the teachers, those that have had professional development that's been ongoing, who've had teachers involved from the beginning as stakeholders, this transition is continuing that model. Those that are trying to start that up right now are at a disadvantage. However, it's a great time for reflection and look at how our teachers are being prepared, our pre-service teachers. Where is the equity in hiring new and experienced teachers and supporting them? And when we talk about support, perhaps a hidden element of digital equity. And if you look in our schools that are in the underserved areas, look at the models of technology support that are provided. Look at the hiring practices for the technology staff to see if they work collaboratively or if they're still involved in siloed type of programs. Today's technology support staff are being asked to adjust things on the fly remotely, and they're supporting users beyond the teachers or the school administrators, certainly more directly with students, and now they're experiencing directly working with parents. And while I've spent mostly the time focused on school and home right now, these concepts extend to the community, because as we ask other members of the family to take on greater responsibility, that then means we need to look at the capabilities in the other locations that students go to, realizing that the extended family is being called on more and more to be involved with the students' learning. And that involvement is going to require greater community investment and greater community commitment to the sustainability of a program. Organizations can help along this line if when they're going into a technology initiative, they can speak upfront about their plans for renewal. If they can talk about their needs to be able to be agile and adjust on the fly, and if they can show the improvement that's happening, they'll be able to strengthen that community support. In reflecting, in having conversations with the organizations and hearing what's working, what they're struggling with, what they've revised, we're seeing the keys to student success is inclusion and flexibility in the technology for each and every learning situation globally is different. There is no one size fits all. However, those keys to success in every environment center around communication, instructional resources that meet the teacher and the student where they are, and assessments that are now being done virtually. And that assessment process is being reimagined and focused on the needs of everyone and accessible for all. The challenge is about engaging learners, helping them socially and emotionally, and not allowing anyone to fall through the gaps. Not expecting online learning to be as it is for some adults who can't have the same model for K-12. Self-motivation, self-efficacy increases as students mature, as they have experiences. When we think about the experiences, when we think about authentic learning, it requires authentic forms of assessment. formative more so than summative. How are students progressing moment to moment, day to day? These are challenges teachers normally address in the classroom. The check-ins along the way, and the ability to have a personal approach and personal connections. This doesn't mean we don't need to stop and take a look at our end of unit and end of term summative assessments and reconsider how we assess students, especially at a large scale in mass. Greater immediate importance is about providing students an opportunity to see their growth, show their growth, and for teachers and parents to be part of that process. Personally, I'm very excited about the future. And as always, I'm excited to be challenged and learn new things.
Thanks, Dave. So let's talk about some ed tech solutions for the future. I want to start out by talking about Jamf School and set some context around our offering. Jamf School is purpose-built for education and allows schools to manage, inventory, and deploy Apple devices to students and teachers right from an IT admin's macOS. With that, there are 3 iPad and iOS apps associated with Jamf School: Jamf School Teacher, Jamf School Student, and Jamf Parent. These apps work in conjunction with a management system to connect teachers, students, and parents to support the student learning environment as a team. The Jamf School Teacher app is designed to meet the needs of educators in any environment. The app makes it possible to quickly and easily manage student Apple devices, classes, and lessons. The Jamf School Teacher app complements Apple's own Apple Classroom app, so the advantages of both systems can be conveniently used together. Some benefits include native and web app deployment directly to students, the ability to prepare lessons and classes in advance, and the ability to directly manage students and the important ability to message students directly. Teachers can also restrict websites, apps, domains, and functionality, as well as create ad hoc classrooms. With the Jamf School Student app, students can manage their own iPad devices under the watchful eye of school administrators and teachers. They can install apps and use websites and functions approved by the school, and use documents stored in their own personal iCloud drive for productivity, meeting learning objectives, and demonstrating learning objectives. The Jamf Parent app resides on the parent's own device. They do this in partnership with the school admins using Jamf School, so they can help manage their students' school-issued device, apps and genres, and messaging, while controlling location and some device functionality while the student is in motion. This direct partnership with the school gives the parent a deepened relationship with the school's own IT admin and teachers for their students' learning experience in any environment. So how can we better enhance remote learning for schools worldwide? Jamf is ready to equip schools, teachers, students, and parents to succeed in a remote environment with a new solution that combines Jamf School with best practices, product workflows, and key app partnerships to solve the education challenge of, number 1, fractured communication, number 2, the lack of instructional resources, and number 3, deploying remote assessments. In addition to existing Jamf Pro and Jamf School features that support remote learning, new enhancements have been released in the Jamf School Teacher app for Jamf School customers and the Jamf Parent app for Jamf Pro customers to bolster these offerings. And when combined with the LT-enabled iPad from Apple, equals access to remote learning and makes it finally a possibility regardless of a student's access to Wi-Fi. Wherever they are in their learning environment, schools will now be able to deploy remote learning with Learn Anywhere from Jamf. So let's take a closer look at communication. Communication is among the most valuable and important aspects of education, never more so than in this remote environment. Students who feel connected with their teachers and fellow students are more likely to stay focused and engaged. So let's take a closer look at how communication is enhanced with JAMF. JAMF School strengthens communication between teachers and students with the JAMF School Teacher app and the JAMF School Student app. In the JAMF School Teacher app, we have a brand new video conferencing feature called Remote Class that we launched just late June. With one click in the JAMF School Teacher app and the use of any video conferencing platform like Zoom, teachers can launch a one-click, one-to-one, or one-to-many virtual meeting with students right on the fly. Students can also use the raised hand feature for immediate messaging and can always message the teacher through native apps. This immediate response time reassures students that teachers are at the ready to address issues and concerns, just like they were able to do face-to-face in the classroom, increasing student confidence and ultimately performance. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Beyond JAMF School Teacher, JAMF enables devices with Apple first-party native tools for communication. Both iMessage and FaceTime support that one-on-one as well as group communication with all the support that you've come to expect from Apple. Students leveraging managed Apple IDs can decide to enable this for teachers and students, and Apple provides the capability for IT to inspect these accounts if necessary. Beyond JAMF and Apple solutions, there are a variety of really popular apps that provide teachers, students, and parents ways to communicate in safe and secure ways. As always, it's important to research tools before deploying and making sure all parties are trained and have the needed resources available. Using the JAMF School Teacher app, the teacher can launch the app, open the class they need, and with one click, connect with students. Using Remote Class, they simply click and start, and an alert will be sent right to the student device. The student views the alert and opens the app to be connected with their teacher in real time. Students who are connected feel better about school and their ability to learn and succeed. Let's move and talk about the second concern in remote learning, engagement. In addition to communication, we know engaging students with cool learning tools is key. We know engaging students and keeping them excited about school in a remote environment can really be challenging. So JAMF can help with distinct product features and cool third-party partnerships. The JAMF School Teacher app allows classes and lessons features to help teachers to interact and instruct students in any environment, using the addition of approved apps and websites to assist students in all aspects of learning. As a part of our Learn Anywhere solution, JAMF has partnered with several apps to enhance the experience for every student. As we know, happy, engaged students make better and more productive students, regardless of their age. JAMF School benefits from a rich partnership with GeoGebra, the virtual calculator, Explain Everything, the virtual whiteboard, as well as Sphero robots to teach coding for optimal engagement. GeoGebra is a free online math tool for graphing, geometry, and 3D. It contains over 1 million free activities, simulations, exercises, and games for math and science. Explain Everything is a virtual whiteboard that allows teachers to teach, present and sketch concepts, and record video for real-time collaboration. Sphero Robot and STEM kits teach students coding, science, music, and the arts through games and activities using small robots. Students need enhanced learning tools, and these three fit the bill while stimulating and entertaining students. Assessments. We know this is a really large challenge in virtual education as well. How do you assess learning objectives safely and accurately in a remote environment? Well, we formed a solution and unique partnership with College Board and AccuPlacer to help with both high and low stakes assessment. In fact, we've developed an app called Assessment that offers proctored assessments right on a student's iPad. This app is available in the App Store, as well as in the JAMF Marketplace on jamf.com. JAMF School also has Apple School Manager, as well as classes and lessons to help. We've got two really valuable blogs on jamf.com from our valued customers at Sewanaka ISD and Eanes ISD. These schools used secure testing with Jamf School and Jamf Pro on iPads with great success. Please go ahead and check them out on our website. We've covered a lot today in this webinar, and I'd like to direct you to our website to assess thought leadership, helpful tips and information. And this is going to be replenished often. We've developed many tools for you to implement Jamf School with best practices and workflows with trusted partners to communicate, foster better engagement, and conduct remote assessment to empower remote teaching and learning in this virtual environment. We produced thought leadership ebooks around total cost of ownership for Apple devices, thought leadership around remote learning with Apple best practices, as well as timely blog articles to help you, your schools, teachers, and students. I'm excited to tell you about a special offer we have with Apple for students to get a discounted device and the benefits of Jamf School. Jamf is 100% committed to education, and now we have a tremendous opportunity to step up and do what we do best at Jamf: help educators, parents, and students thrive during this fast pivot to a virtual learning environment and adjustment to sudden change that likely will not change quickly. We formed a special offer with Apple for schools. Jamf is offering free use of Jamf School for a period of 4 months for an unlimited number of Apple devices. This includes the use of Jamf School Teacher, Parent, and Student apps. Thank you for joining us today. While we've highlighted many resources in today's webinar, I wanted to take a moment to direct anyone on the call to explore the capabilities of Jamf School by requesting a free trial today. Scanning this QR code will bring you right to jamf.com to begin the process and get you started with a free trial immediately.
Okay. Well, Dave and Molly, thanks for that presentation. Jam-packed with stuff. There you are, Dave. How are you? So many different elements. Hey, Molly. To go through, and I know we've spoken before over the years. Jamf has been pretty well positioned to kind of help in this crisis, because I mean these are the topics that the company was going after for years before, right, Dave?
Absolutely. The people that were out there watching right now that have been doing it for decades have failed a bunch of times, like I did when I was in my districts. And I try not to make the same mistake a third time, and diving a bit deeper and going further than surface level is really, we're watching the people that are successful now, and they're still struggling. They're still having issues, but they have resolved some of them along the way because of the way they focused. And it's in a way great to see that it's an opportunity for others to come into this. How can we help people vicariously versus go through all the trial and tribulations that a lot of us did on our own?
Right. But even so, in the conversations that I've been having, even the most progressive companies, as well as the most progressive districts who have been utilizing these sort of technologies forever, still had that moment in March where it's that aha moment, or that oh no moment. I think it was around like Friday the 13th or Pi Day. Maybe Dave and Molly, you both can talk about that moment for you as Jamf representatives. I mean, what was it that weekend where you're like, this is something completely different?
As someone who prides himself as a teacher who tries to, I travel around the world. We have some innovation centers, and I try to change instruction to be active. And part of that is how I behave as a teacher. When you take me out of that physicalness and try to enable that same thing, that is the challenge that all of our brilliant teachers out there, no matter how much with itness they had, how great a teacher they were, how do we to extend that same skill you had, the eyes in the back of your head, the adjusting for you, Kevin, because you didn't have breakfast this morning, and because Molly read the whole chapter, how do I adjust for that? That is something gifted teachers do without anybody even noticing. And that was probably the aha, like, oh gosh, you've taken my kryptonite, has now been thrown in the room type of thing.
Yeah, Molly, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we were just in a very unique position at that very time, considering everything we had on the roadmap. So really everything we were already doing was just going to translate in a different kind of way. So it was just more of a quick pivot from a marketing perspective, to make sure that we were spreading, wide and clear that we were partnering with Apple. We were going to get these needs met. It's something we did previously, and it's something that I think we've continued to do quite well.
Yeah. Now let's move a little further into the spring and talk about some of the organizations that you support. In my conversations with many districts, the measure of success was just getting kids connected, just having the ability to do what we're doing right now with a student and a teacher, and that for a lot of schools, forget about the COVID slide, forget about learning loss for right now. It's just about building a community. And Dave, you mentioned that in the presentation earlier about the multiple layers. Is that something that you also saw in the spring?
Well, we saw it primarily because we did a lot of conversations with the districts that we already had relationships with. What are their challenges? And first and foremost, across the board, it was, hey, we're worried, first and foremost, the well-being, emotional well-being of our students and our staff, and how can we connect them? And we ran into this crisis of people trying to do video conferencing for the very first time. And we learned from the schools that were already doing it, because they had already had hybrid models, they had solved the fear, the FUD that people had, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And that became an opportunity. How can we help streamline that connection from the teacher to the student? And that to me was an eye-opening. People were saying, we're not trying to introduce new things. We're just trying to get people comfortable, and let's back up on the things we've already implemented, and maybe provide new professional development and really focus on the things we've already tried to get teachers to do versus brand new. And that other part of how do we connect people? And that's where we looked at, okay, where can we help the most? And that was in that connection. And then once they're connected, how can we bring to their attention some capabilities? And I'll add this. This is where I learned from the other people that had, and I asked these questions 12 years ago when I traveled globally around the world, and I still do. If you can't answer what you do for the 25% of students who don't have home internet, in 2010, that was a question you should have had answered. Then it was, what are you doing for those students? And the districts that are succeeding had those answers and have been doing hotspots and doing programs. But now they're finding out that there's 3 kids at home and a mother and father at home. So the fact that they had a checkbox that they had home internet, this shifting how they changed instruction from everybody's online at 8 o'clock to do math, because how can a brother, a sister, and the dad or mother be online working simultaneously? So what the other learning that it gave them an opportunity to shift to more of that hybrid when kids are on, and not look at that standard schedule. And so those are the 2 biggies for me. Is one, even if you had internet, you still have to start manipulating your mindset of how kids are going to access. But you better have an access ability. And I'll share one, because I just drove around a district with somebody, and we tried to do hotspots. And what we found out was, they really wanted to shift to that LTE embedded, because of the dilemmas they're having with kids not charging the hotspot getting loose, being used by multiple people. And here we thought the solution was hotspots. Well, if we hadn't gone and talked to these districts that have already done it, we would have learned a valuable lesson. So, I know I covered a couple of things there, but in things that we didn't realize came to the top.
Yeah.
But I guess if you're focused on the crisis as a whole, you may not even be able to focus on those yet.
Yeah. Molly, you're nodding your head.
Well, we were, really kind of serendipitous position that we had. Dave is the global strategist. I work on product marketing, and we had an entire executive board that was committed to equity, committed to not only, getting our current customers, getting those one-to-one devices deployed, getting everybody where they needed to be, but they started taking a look at, how many kids don't have devices and what can we do there? How can we give away Jamf School for a maximum amount of time? Not only do it like a free trial like we typically do, but we wanted to give it away with full support.
Yeah.
Because we knew there was going to be massive amounts of people who not only didn't know how to deploy a device, but certainly didn't know how to implement Jamf School. So we were really, really lucky to be able to partner with Apple and offer a discounted device, an LTE-enabled device, along with a free trial of the education product that we lead with, Jamf School in K through 12. And recently we extended it. I would imagine we will keep extending it. But like Dave mentioned, we've gone from, looking at equity and devices to really, really focusing on, eSIM and connectivity, which is primarily a US issue. We cover every global market. We're only seeing this here. So we've focused a lot on putting forth best practices. Dave and I will be doing another webinar through Jamf, I believe in November, talking about some of the best practices in ways that educators might not have the time to think about. So we want to make sure that we're getting ahead of that. And quite frankly, we've tapped into some leading customers who I think have great stories to share with other customers and or prospects. So
there's really no better time than to share these best practices, right? I mean, it's just when you have innovative districts who are doing amazing things, it's a really important message. Go a little further. I find it interesting that Jamf is continuing to offer free products and services. Back in April, to the credit of the industry, everybody stepped up, said, "This is free. That's free. Let's get it together." I've noticed over the back to school that that's not necessarily the general sentiment anymore, because you have to make money, right? And you have to continue to do. So what about with Jamf? How are you able to offer that service?
Sure. I mean, it was never a question. I can speak from, a product standpoint from our partnership with Apple. There was a very fine line to walk that we as consumers were on the receiving end from other companies when COVID started. So there's kind of that fine line between giving it away and marketing for something later on. We never wanted that to be the case. It was always going to be, we are giving this to you. We're going to give you the full cadre of services and support that come behind that. And it's something that we'll continue to do, asking nothing in return.
Yeah. And Molly, to speak to that a little bit, Kevin, I worked in schools and I was an IT and library director for years. And I can tell the difference between something that's free, something that is free for now, and what's going to hit me on the back end. And since 2013, Jamf created the teacher app, and that was the tool that helped teachers manage their iPads in the classroom. That has been free and out there since 2013. We've improved it, and we then came out with the parent app, which again is a free app for parents to be able to manage the devices when they came home. When I joined the company before at Texas Instruments, we learned about the business model of people. What is their business model? Because they've got to make money. And I know I have to pay for a service. I want it to be fair. I want it to be reasonable, and I don't want to get shocked. And I think that comes from Jamf's aspect of providing value-added pieces. And when somebody asks on a question about, I talk about concepts. I'm more about the concept, and I go look for a solution. Yes, there is an app out on other devices for a teacher potentially to manage the devices. So if you have a Windows or a Chromebook solution, likely that is a paid product. And the dilemma is when schools are trying to save money, they don't add those up and they skimp on that. They skimp on professional development for teachers and a teacher tool. So we recognized back we need to bundle that in. And so this extension of our product is for a period of time is one thing, but this notion of trying to support teachers and then the parents, for me, that is the biggest difference. Is someone will ask, how can we do these things? And Molly covered the capabilities that we provide. Those are things we try to build into our product. Somebody doesn't go, well, how much extra does that cost me? And I would look at company's history. Do they have a history of putting out a product for free for 6 months and then sending, telling you, great, you love it now, but here's what it costs later? And that supporting teachers in their transition, supporting this now home use, there are capabilities out there by other platforms. To me, that I was presenting on that in 2016, that you need to look beyond the device. You need to look at the affordances. And, I can grab a Windows device, and if you buy the right one, you can have a lot of the affordances. Are schools buying those affordances, and are they looking to support teachers? And so you got to look beyond the next 6 months of someone providing something for free. And Jamf is a for-profit company. They have to keep reminding me that sometimes. But I think you need to look at a company's long history of that, not just what they're doing over these last 6 months.
That's a good insight.
But yeah.
Yeah. One of the questions that came in from the audience, actually, to kind of complement what you were just mentioning with your Windows device, are there overlaps? Are there takeaways that audience members here can take from your messages? And is there an interoperability between Jamf solutions and other sort of operating systems and setups?
So separating those two on the Jamf, the concepts that I suggested are, I was worked in an all Windows school district, and TPAC modeling and bringing technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge together has been around longer than that. Asking people to look at what they're doing and apply those principles of digital equity is irrelevant of the platform. The challenge we run into is sometimes, so when I say, I mentioned that I have a Chromebook that has touch screen and all those capabilities and affordances, so that if you're a student of need, you have those capabilities. Is a district buying a device that has that? Is the Windows or the other device, does it have those capabilities? Did you buy a teacher tool to support teachers who haven't been given really good professional development in managing technology? That's a challenge. When you look at your IT, do your IT work collaboratively? It's irrelevant of the platform. But if they choose the platform that is a one size fits all, then the teacher has no ability to, I mentioned that in some, being able to change agilely and customize a user's experience from the teacher's perspective, not having to email Nick at IT to please give this app to so-and-so, that might not even be a capability. And that, so why I ask people to look at the layers is because when you've chosen your platform, are you thinking of these in advance or are they hindsight? So I would say conceptually, absolutely they cross over. The second piece I'll add to the platform is, yes, they almost always come at a paid for cost. And I will tell you, any district that starts with, we bought these because they're cheaper, will not likely pay for the teacher tool because it's an extra cost.
Right.
And yes, Jamf is an Apple platform that, we do have abilities there are a lot of districts. Almost everyone. My last district had a percentage of Windows, a percentage of Chrome, a percentage of iPads. Our systems play that the IT wants a single pane of glass. They want to be able to manage the device to the best of the ability versus watered down. So we do not manage other devices. We play nicely with the other systems people use, and we encourage people to use the best system for the platform they're using to get the best advantage. But I would say I'm trying to get people to have a conversation to meet their needs before they select that device. And by all means, you can do these things to an extent with other platforms. I probably got a little redundant. I got one, my Sphero Ball. I love it. we send these homes to kids, but I can use this on my iPad, my Mac, or my Chromebook that I have sitting here, my Windows machine. However, am I able to just use it easily with a tablet handheld device, or am I sitting at a table typing on a keyboard? Which affordances do you want the child to take advantage of?
Right.
Interacting with a teacher, do you have a camera? I'll stop there because this could be a session. I want everyone to take advantage of these, and it starts with asking those questions, and I think you can meet the needs, but you might not find it as easy to do, or as when we do a total cost of ownership, we have districts that flat out show that when you add all these things in, anyone who tries to say the iPad's more expensive than a Chromebook is because they're not trying to do these things. Right. And I'll stop on that piece. Sorry, I think I went a little bit more, but I'm happy to engage with anybody to try to help them see how they could do it in their environment, regardless of their platform. Because our goal is to try to improve all students, not just those that have iPads.
And I'll just take a minute here. Thank you, David. I'll just take a minute here for anyone out in the audience. If you have any other questions, we have about 10 minutes left. Please feel free to forward them in through the Q&A button at the bottom. Molly, I'm going to go back to a part of your presentation that really had me thinking, was when you were talking about the element of parent involvement. I've been writing about education technology for about 15 years, and the number of stories I can think that mention parents is probably on one hand. And then all of a sudden March comes, and every parent, including myself, has become a teaching assistant as well as an IT department. So I found that extra description of your products and services with the parent in mind as something that is intentional, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. So here's the thing. We've always had a parent as an audience. In fact, it was the first app that we made available for both of our education products. So we had Jamf Parent available for Jamf Pro, which is more, larger K-12 districts, more high ed focused. It's a very, very, popular commercial product. We also have K-12, which is Jamf School, and that pioneered the teacher app, which we actually just released in both products as well. Okay. So we've had the parent really at a forefront for a long time. In fact, last spring, just right around the time this hit, we were doing some enhancements to watchOS. So in addition to the iOS functionalities for this app, they could actually do some limited functionalities on their watch. So where is my student? Did they arrive where we thought they were going to be arriving? And again, this app is free as well. When we sat down and really took a look at what we wanted to get out in terms of messaging for our product's capabilities and all of these offers that we were putting out, we knew the parent was first and foremost as well. So for the first time ever at Jamf, I put a blog up on our website that was actually directed towards a parent. Normally we market primarily towards IT admin. We've been doing a lot of speaking directly to teachers in our marketing. We've been really trying to pull in that parent audience. I mean, the parent is a co-teacher, they're cheerleaders, they're stressed, they're tapped from a technology standpoint. Jamf products are very intuitive, they're very easy, they're built for education, and we feel like we've had a lot to offer parents. And I know as a parent, I need that as much as everybody else does too.
Oh, yes. As a parent of three, two of my three left for school today for the first time in 6 months. So I was a little bit more reassured about my own bandwidth to have this webinar. So yeah, we're all there, right?
Kevin, I've been being part of the main project was MLTI and sending devices home in the early 2000s. I know people have done it before me. It only takes one or two angry parents at a school board. And I was actually having to do sessions back then on how to set up your home Wi-Fi, how to knock on your neighbor's door and ask them to put a password on their Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And we had some things on the Apple side that we could do but they were limiting. When one of the concerns, and as far as mixed platforms, with equity comes in sake, and we have this in the Jamf School version of Parent. We've had this since we've had it, that you can actually, yes, we have it on an iPhone app, and yes, it's cool if you have a watch, but there's a web portal version. So, because if you do a survey, probably more than half, if not greater than that, parents out there have another, especially in low income areas, have a non-Apple product. And so how do parents decide that my child doesn't have the internet until I get home from work?
Right.
That's a simple request. That's a tap of a button. And so there is a web portal. We're trying to bring a solution as quickly as we can to Jamf Pro, because while it came to Jamf Pro, so in Jamf School, that was one of our top things we had to put in is a web portal so parents can, without Apple devices. And that's probably as far as we're ever going to go as far as supporting other platforms. And I'm not going to say that's an absolute, but we recognize that piece, because parents that want a child to sit at a kitchen table while they're working and dinner, parents that want to be able to send their child to their bedroom. In my day, it was like, well, make the child leave their laptop outside of their bedroom. Now you can say, okay, you can only go in your homework apps,
Yeah.
or you can only, and in this day and age with that home, how to help parents is honestly, it's got to be top of mind because hybrid model or full-blown virtual is here for a while, and that's not a bad thing. Virtual snow days in Maine were purposeful at one point. I don't necessarily, so I can't help but emphasize this notion of trying to support the parents who are struggling with their child being home. And when it used to be an either or, it had to be a personal device for a parent to go buy that kind of app. To be able to do it with a school issued device that's school managed and in partnership with the school, where the parents can manage it outside of the school day and such, it really has become a top of critical issue. Watching what kids are doing, tracking their apps and things like that. I know a lot of people want to be able to do those kind of things. There's certain Apple capabilities. I'm always more about giving privileges. A kid earns a privilege. They have access to certain things. That's the digital citizenship concept. Can your school give a child at home an extra app because they're on an honor roll, or is it one size fits all? Did you earn the camera because you did a module in digital citizenship? Well, the parents can decide those same things when they're at home. And they're not either limited to the school or restricted or not able to limit things because the school gave them. That type of partnership is an important piece.
All right, well, as we start to run out of time here, I had one final question I wanted to ask each of you in kind of a big picture sense. As you go through and you work with your customers and you work with the organizations on not only the digital equity piece or the parental piece or the social emotional learning piece, or even the assessments, we didn't even get to the assessment. I had some questions there. Do you believe that when we return to normal, whatever that is, that these techniques, these strategies of not only your software, but just in general, this dynamic will go back to the way it was before, or are we really entering a new phase of education? Dave, maybe I'll ask you that first.
Well, I'll say that having been in education a long time, the books I have about flipped classroom, the wonderful book about meeting any student's needs. These are all things we've been trying to do, and there have been some things that got in the way. Number one, unfortunately, has been sports. We can't have alternative schedules because of sports. I've been in year-round schools. These concepts that we're trying to do are actually not new, and they're things that people have purposely wanted to do. So hopefully some people will see the benefits, and regardless of what their normal will be, they will see the advantages of some of these, and especially how they meet a broader audience. So my hope is this has given some people, unfortunately, a forced opportunity to look at some capabilities. When they get a chance to decide for themselves what to bring in, I hope that they look to the ones that were successful and try to continue the path to transformational use of technology.
That's
Now,
great.
I agree with Dave. I think that we are going to be really reimagining curriculum. We're going to be reimagining space. We're going to be reimagining time. And I think it's a really exciting time for us to be able to do that. We have a trusted advisory board, customer advisory board that we've been meeting with often, and really kind of keeping our eyes on the pulse, not only in the US, but internationally. International markets are recovering a lot quicker than we are. So it's interesting as they're a little bit ahead of us to watch those trends and how they're bouncing back.
Well, that's great. Dave and Molly, really have to thank you for letting me be a part of this conversation. I thought the presentation had a lot of really important information for everybody. I mean, not just district people, but as a parent, as I sit here, to have these realizations of where we're going forward. And I thought your answers to the Q&A portion were the same as well. It's very insightful. So thanks for your time.
Thank you all. Thanks everybody for joining. And I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great. So I'd like to thank our presenters again for a very informative presentation. And I'd like to thank all of the audience members for joining us as well. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording, along with the slides. Thanks again for participating, and have a great day.